This week, Sony Alpha rumors came out with a video discussing the potential release of a new FX camera in early 2024. We've all been kind of trying to brainstorm here, what could this new FX camera be? Because there are a few different options. The FX9 has kind of been asking for an update, so we know that we're going to get an update to that camera at some point. In the Sony Alpha rumors video, they do mention that this new FX camera is going to be around the FX6 area in terms of capability, price. And so it had me thinking. I ended up calling Josh Satin. We started spitballing, and I thought about the history of Sony cinema cameras, especially their prosumer line. The first camera I remember playing with that had the Super 35 sensor, interchangeable lenses, was the FS100. Then there's the FS700. Then there's the FS7, the FS5. You see what I'm saying? There's all these Super 35 cameras, and then when Sony jumped to the FX9 and the FX6, they jumped to full frame without releasing any Super 35 cameras other than the FX30, which is just in the mirrorless body. So it had us thinking, what if Sony ends up doing to the FX30 what they did to the FX3, the A7S III with its relation to the FX6? And maybe they take a camera like the FX30, take its sensor and features, put it in the same style body as an FX6, but call it an FX60, give it pretty much all the same features as the FX6, like internal ND, XLR, the MXF files internally, but just with the FX30 sensor, and maybe give us a little bit more horsepower behind the scenes so you can get some more features out of the FX30 sensor. For instance, being able to shoot 6K external via RAW HDMI, using an Atomos recorder, getting ProRes RAW. Blackmagic RAW would be great in the future, but it's probably going to be ProRes RAW. I could see a beefier computer in the camera being able to handle that 6K output. On top of that, maybe 4K 120 frames per second, full sensor, instead of being the actual 4K image size of the sensor and not being downscaled. In this camera, maybe they could support the 4K 120 and still get that nice crispy 6K downscaled image. But I think there's a lot that Sony can do if they put a beefier computer in that camera and get more out of the sensor. Now, this is all just a theory. I have no facts behind it other than seeing the history Sony has gone and realizing that they've kind of left their Super 35 market behind other than in the FX30. And as great of a camera as the FX30 is, I use them on a daily basis. I even have two of them. There's a few things like internal NDs that are missing that I would totally pick up if an FX60 version of the FX6 was released and I could use all of my Super 35 glass, my APS-C glass, and not really skip a beat. So this is kind of the idea I came up with Josh Satin. I don't know for sure if this is what Sony is going to release, but if they do release something and it ends up sitting underneath the FX6, it's what I can imagine it being. Now let's talk about price for a second. What would the price of this so-called camera be? Because it would have to be under the FX6 if it's not full frame and not offering that kind of low light sensibility that the FX6 offers. And so it got us thinking, maybe it would sit around the $3,000 price point or the $3,500 price point. It would be not quite half the price of the FX30, especially when it goes back to its normal price. But at the same time, it would be further enough away in price to justify maybe getting an FX60 over an FX30, or getting one FX60 and then having a few FX30s as supplemental cameras to that FX60, kind of like you can do with the FX6, where you can get an FX6, then get a few FX3s or whatever, and use those as supplemental cameras. And I think the reason it makes sense for Sony to do this, with the FX6, it's full frame, and the FX3 is full frame, so you can share a lot of the same lenses. And then, of course, the FX30 can share a lot of the same lenses too, albeit with a crop. However, if you're trying to use Super 35 lenses on the FX30, you can't really share those as easily on the FX3 and the FX6 because it's not a crazy high resolution sensor. It's only sitting around 4.2K. You're not going to get a great resolution if you're putting a Super 35 crop sensor lens on those cameras. Now, that's part of the reason I got the A7 IV. At this point, if Sony came out with an FX60, We can then share all of those lenses, be in the exact same ecosystem together, including the full frame lenses, of course, if you have any full frame lenses and want to put that on there. But the key is being able to share a lot of these lenses in these same cameras and not have to really think about, oh, will this one work? Will that one work? They all will work with the same cameras. For someone like me, it would totally make sense to pick up an FX60, run an FX60 with two FX30s. That becomes my 3-camera system. I probably would still keep my A7 IV, but for those specific times where I need full frame video, otherwise I'd just be running Super 35 all the time. I personally love Super 35. I love the image quality out of it. I don't really find it to be a huge hit from full frame. I don't really need the crazy low light you get on these full frame cameras. And on top of that, I really enjoy the weight savings we see on Super 35 APS-C cameras from Sony, just because although the camera may be the same size, the lenses are just so much smaller with really, really just superb image quality. For me, I like getting the smallest cameras possible with the highest image quality out of them, so I can have the balance, I can travel with them, and not really have to hurt my back that much. So if you have any thoughts on what you think this new Sony FX camera would be, do you agree with me that it could be the FX60? Let me know in the comments below. I know Josh is going to do his own video talking about what he thinks the FX60 could be, so make sure to stay tuned for that as well. And if you got knowledge and value out of today's video, I will ask, please hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell so you can keep up to date with the latest videos and see more videos like this on the channel. Till next time, my name is Geoff Fagien. Thank you for watching as always, and I will see you in the next video.